Hey, what's going on, guys? We got a special guest today here. We have the CEO and founder of Pour My Beer. He's also the best-selling author of Tap the Big Idea, Josh Goodman. Josh, we're so excited to have you here today. And for you, in your story, you have so much resilience. Where did that come from for you?
Yeah, I would say it was an acquired skill that I acquired through middle school. A lot of people that kind of look at me today or even knew me in college wouldn't recognize who I was in middle school. Going through I would say the tough middle school years, gaining a few extra pounds. I mean, again, this not to date myself, but in the '80s, it was or late '80s, early '90s, it was a lot of cereal, a lot of video games, and not as active as I probably could have been or should have been at that age. And that resulted in being a little, my mom would say, big boned or husky. Yeah, so the middle school years were tough, but looking back, that's what kind of started the process of me becoming more resilient, and going through some adversity.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's funny because we always label ourselves in different ways to make people feel better. Like you just said there, he's big boned, he's husky, it's not a big deal. But people do that all the time with things and try to make it okay. But then there's a point where you as an individual are like, I'm not okay with this. Like I want to improve. So what caused you to kind of flip that switch and want to continue that progression?
I'd say it was my freshman year. So, for me, just kind of from a size perspective, I was about 5'10", 180 pounds as a freshman in high school. And I'd played sports my whole life, and I'd done pretty well at them. But then my freshman year, I had to watch everyone else play a sport. So I was on the sidelines for football and on the sidelines watching them play and watching them enjoy it. And that that flipped a switch to me where I decided kind of I didn't externally mention this to anybody, but I said, I'm going to go from being a no-name person on the JV to starting on the varsity my sophomore year.
Oh
And
wow.
it was a crazy goal, especially at our high school. I grew up in Chester, Virginia, so it's kind of a suburb of Richmond. And that the school I went to, Thomas Dale, that we had several NFL athletes. Like it was kind of Texas style high school football. But every small community, everyone went to the games. I mean, the rival game would have 10,000 people there. So me saying a statement like that was insane. To be literally third string linebacker on JV and say I'm going to start on varsity next year. And but similar to what they say, you put things out in the universe and they happen, and it did. So that was kind of like I would say that the switch got flipped that freshman year in high school.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And it's that now I imagine that you probably are a little more open with sharing the goals and aspirations as you have a company. But when you really do start, like the idea has to be born with inside of you because it can't be just someone wants it for you. You have to start wanting this inside of yourself and you want this drive. And we're just talking sports now, but we're going to start diving into business and other things. But for you, have you seen this throughout your entire life where it's, I set the example and I went for it? Like action, like I set the plan and then I take action.
Yeah, that's something that I'm a big believer in. Like even back then, I didn't have Chat GPT or things to tell me like this is the regimen you should do to go from a no-name freshman to starting on the varsity as a sophomore. I just put work in. I went to the gym more. I I reminded myself of that pain of what it's like to watch others enjoy a sport that you enjoy, and that became my fuel. And that I would say consistency of just I remember vividly going in my garage and turning musical and just doing push-ups and doing anything. There was no strategic method to improving myself. I just knew that I didn't. The other thing that happened after that freshman year of football is the wrestling coach came and gave a speech. It was my first experience as being sold to. I didn't realize
Yeah.
that till later in life, but he was doing a sales pitch on why you should wrestle because the wrestling team needed more wrestlers. And when he started listing out all these NFL players that wrestled, like Ray
Oh wow.
Lewis and I think Justin Donald, in today's day and age. But he started naming off like 10 or 15 wrestlers, and then also some college athletes, because being in Virginia, you have Virginia Tech and UVA. So the names of the really good college players resonate as well. So he just did an excellent job selling me on wrestling. And that, I was like, okay, well, if I commit to that, that'll help me get to my goal. And again, that was just kind of, I would say that was, I don't want to call it luck, but it's like, I didn't know that wrestling could help me get to where I wanted to go. And then just being involved in that team really changed a lot of my work habits, and just, kind of like, it was also fun, like beating people one on one. Like that was, I'm very competitive. So in football, you have to compete alongside 10 other people, and you work as a team. In wrestling, it's you and that other person on the mat. And if you lose, it's 100% your fault, you know?
Absolutely. And I think one of the coolest things that we're talking about through sports is that no matter what you do, even if the sports are different, even if the things are different, it still helps you with everything you do. Like one of the things I've been doing recently, probably for the past year, is there's a Muay Thai gym down the street from me. So they have 6 a.m. classes Tuesday, Thursday, and I just go. And it's like, Jordan, why would you do Muay Thai? And it's because, first of all, you learn self defense, you learn all these other things, but you start to learn about yourself, and then you can apply yourself in different areas. Like if I do the Muay Thai in the morning, I have a better day, and you just start to realize these things, that it's good to add in things that might not make sense at the time, but then they start to later down when you look backwards.
Absolutely. I think just that part right there is trying new things and sucking at it, but continuing to do it, because you have to trust that work is gonna compound and add up to making you a better version of yourself, or unlock a new version of yourself, or introduce you to people that you might not have ever met before, unless you did go down that road.
Yeah, absolutely. And the really important thing is realizing that every time you do something, and like the problem is that as people get better and better at things, like in your past story, like you did very well in sales, and it's like, okay, you do very well in sales, you don't usually want to restart because you're like, I have this standard for my life, and I don't feel that I should be below that because I have this ego and I'm the man. Most people have that. So it's hard for them to try new things. But for you, what's allowed you to be so open to new things? Because new things are one of the biggest advantages, I think, to people, whether it's traveling to a new location, whether it's trying a new job, whether it's trying a new housing situation, whatever it is, I think it's so beneficial.
For me, a lot of it's come from pain, not to sound like dark, but going back to the middle school experience, that was painful. I mean, I recently did some breath work, which highly recommend people trying or experimenting with. But I had a conversation with my 12-year-old self, and I don't know how accurate this statement is, but like my 12-year-old self was like, crying to me and asking like, why is everyone so mean to me? So that, like, clearly there's some damage that was done. Not to laugh at it, but like there was some damage done at that age that kind of set the stage for that. And then thinking back to like, yes, I sold Cutco Knives. That was an awesome experience. I regularly speak to some of the division offices that want me to talk about my time with there, because learning how to sell was such an important part for me in the process, because everything I'd always done was sports related. So I loved getting the accolades in sports and winning. But the transition from sports to business for me was sales, because up until I was 23 years old, I thought the only way you could make money was whatever your hourly rate was times how many hours you put into it. Because I'd done all the hourly jobs. I bagged groceries. I did manual labor. I painted gym floors. Like I did a lot of manual labor, and every way I got paid was, you did this many hours, you got this many dollars. So selling Cutco for me was like, oh my god, like I could sell $1,000 set of knives and make $400 in an hour. Okay, that's kind of cool, you know.
Well, and
Um,
it's so eye-opening because most of us aren't open to those opportunities where it's like you see people where you're like, "Oh, you've never experienced different kinds of money." Like, you've never experienced the random hirely hourly wage because you weren't selling something. You've never created the product. And usually that's where, I mean, it's a very new idea. Like, it's not new, but like there's always been entrepreneurship, but it's been even more accessible nowadays than it's ever been, where you can literally sit there and go, "Wait, I have this idea. Let me see if it has value and has some legs, and I can see if I can make money."
yeah, and I like to reference that time in my life, because that was an awakening for me, to see that there's other ways to, like, again, no offense to my parents, but they were just always like, do good in school, go to college, get a job. That was, which is
Of
weird
course.
because my dad owned a business. So he owned a carpet business that I would regularly help, kind of lay tack strip and lay padding, but I was always paid by the job. You know what I mean? Like, so for me, like that was a eye-opening experience, and kind of, to fast forward to like actually getting to corporate sales. So I did Cutco during college, and then after college, I ran my own office where I had to recruit, train, and maintain a sales team, which was another skill set that I had to learn. You're recruiting people to pay you to come work for you, and then they sell the Cutco knives, and I made a percentage of whatever they sold. So not like a pyramid, but it was, we paid them whether they made a sale or not, but the goal was that they made more sales than not. So it
Of
was
course.
it was, we had
Well,
some good experiences there.
so I think that's really important because most of us, even when we do our entrepreneurial journey, we never really get past that. So I think there's three components to it. There's the employee, the manager, and the owner. And majority of the time when you're running a small business like you were with Cutco Knives, like Cutco Knives is a bigger company, but as the salesperson, you're employee, manager, owner of yourself. And then as you go to a bigger thing, you're like, okay, we can hire employees. I can manage them. There's obviously the owner of Cutco Knives, so they're owning all of it, but it's just whenever you go through these things, you have to realize where you're at in that framework. And each of those requires a completely different skill set to sell a person to, hey, let's join the team to, do you want knives? They're completely different. And you have to pull people on what really drives them. So, how are you able to even recruit people? Because I feel like it's not an easy process at all.
So we did a lot of things. So we sent mailers out. We advertised in the newspaper. Again, this was like early 2000s, so 2004ish, 2003. And we would get, a flood of emails and calls coming in. And then I had receptionists that I would pay to schedule appointments to meet with me for an interview. And the interview process was about an hour and 15 minutes. And it was really just me explaining the position in full detail, but also like using a lot of takeaways, explaining like how the $15 base appointment worked, and how commissions worked, and how our team set up appointments. And it like a lot of direct sales type roles, it starts with your kind of family, friends that you're presenting to, and then you get I guess the referrals from there. And I think that's where, for me, when I sold Cutco, it was seeing people that were like second and third generation referrals spending $1,000 with me. It really just, I would say, amplified my conviction in the product, because I was able to sell to people I'd never met before, you know? Um, yeah.
And
So
no, but that's a huge point because most of us always go friends and family. Very few friends and family are going to support you because they have a frame of who you are as an individual. They go, why is Josh, the football player, trying to sell me knives? It doesn't make sense. But when you have these new people come in, it's a completely different frame. And they sit there and go, Josh sells Cutco. I don't know anything about Josh. That's what he does. I would go on. And it's this interesting thing. And I say this because I have groups that I coach with, and a lot of people struggle with this idea. And that's why friendships are kind of hard to maintain because they're like, my friends don't view me in the different light because the friends only view you in the light of, hey, we're friends. Like, we sat on the couch together. We played football together. I can never see Josh doing better than me because we played football together. How could he do better? And it's a lot
yeah.
of internal stuff.
And for me, I always, something, I mean, I would say maybe some of this is just natural, but like I would always kind of pull down any barriers from the start. Like I would spend 20, 30 minutes just talking and building rapport, telling them how I'm trying to earn a scholarship through, through selling the Cutco, and talking about like my experience in college, and just how I know, like, if it's a second or third layer person, dropping in little funny stories about the people that they know. So there's like that connective too. And it's funny because a lot of that, I would say, came natural. I mean, I did go to sales training seminars with Cutco, but they talked about rapport, but I think that in itself as an art form is building a connection with somebody without them feeling like you're giving them like 30 questions, just trying like to desperately find that connective thing. Or, again, like, just, again, this sounds generic, but someone's got a picture of a fish on their wall, and you don't recognize the picture of the fish. You just randomly say, yeah, last week I took my son up to go fishing in the Finger Lakes. You should look at the size of this fish we caught. It's like, so you know that he fishes or she fishes. So you're going to inject a story about fishing into the conversation. And then guess what? Now they're going to tell you a story. And now you're not talking about knives anymore. You're not talking about, with our company, self-serve beverages. You're talking about what you have in common. And, it's breaking down that barrier. And, but kind of not to jump too far ahead, but like that set the foundation for like I enjoyed sales. I felt like I was naturally good at it. And there's no ceiling, so
Of course.
I took that. My one buddy always gives me a hard time. He's like, there was a period in my 20s where I had a different business card like every year or two. So like I went from Cutco, not to get dramatic, but my business got robbed, which was weird. And I got an insurance check. So I was like, oh, I think I'm done with this chapter of my life. So I closed down the Cutco office in 2004 and went into corporate business to business sales for, at the time, AT&T and Singular. So we were doing, again, like Blackberries and PDAs and working with like business to business. So that was legit cold calling, knocking on doors, all out through Baltimore. And I was doing okay with that. Can't say I was passionate about phones. And I remember that was the first time I saw that it wasn't necessarily how hard you worked to make a lot of money. If you got gifted like an amazing account, you could print money, and so then it became like, whose butt do I have to kiss to ensure that like when this person gets a promotion, I can get this money making account,
Yeah,
and yeah.
100%, which doesn't even have to do, because now you're trying to think smarter instead of harder. And it's like, wait a second, I could go knock 100 doors today and maybe get 2 interested people. Or this guy's got a mammoth account and I just become his best friend and I could be his helper for an hour a day. And then I get his account and it's like, that changes the game.
It was, I would say it was like for me as an athlete who always prided themselves on like, I'm going to outwork somebody. I remember the first time, because they'd always talk about, oh, this guy Lee, he's 800% of quota. Oh, this guy Jim is 700% of quota. It's funny, the one guy Jim was on The Apprentice. I think not Jim. Yeah, he was on The Apprentice, like one of the first Apprentice shows they had. But they were touting him. But I always try to follow like R&D research. What is
Yeah, research and development. Yeah.
The other R&D, rob and duplicate. So you follow them, you learn how they do what they do, and you duplicate it so you can have similar results. And I remember going and I was like, can I shadow you guys for the day? Because again, in a commission job, like you got to go close deals. That's how you make money. Like I think the time my salary was like 30 or 40 grand, and the expectation was that at quota you were making $5 grand in bonus a month. So these guys were like, like I said, 700 to 800% of quota, and then they got
35, 40 grand. Yeah,
they were killing it. So I went on a few appointments with them, and I saw they were not good salespeople. They were not like they were not super hard workers. They were order takers. But that was one of those things where I was like, my honeymoon, similar to yours coming up, came. It was in September of 2004, and basically it was like 2.5, 3 weeks that I was off, of work.
Yeah.
Guess who didn't hit their quota that month? This guy.
Of course.
And then I got put on a PIP, performance improvement plan. I was like, so now I'm in the hole. Now I have to work myself out of the hole. And I'm like, I don't even like this. Like I don't enjoy what I'm doing. So I kind of went on, I was like, I'm going to find something else I enjoy, or, another kind of sales type role.
Opportunity. Yeah.
And that's what took me into the staffing world, which again, this whole time I'm learning of different ways you can make money through sales and, how they work. And the cool thing about staffing was it's like an annuity. So once you put someone to work, if you're billing the customer for $100 an hour and you're paying them $50 an hour and the company's making $50 an hour, gross margin, like that's staffing, so yeah. I could build up an annuity of customers or consultants out there. And then occasionally I'd get a perm placement, which typically would pay around 15 to 20% of their salary. And I would get a percentage of that percentage. So I was making, good money, and after I left singular wireless AT&T wireless world. But that going back to that whole painful thing. I was the number one salesperson in our Baltimore metro area. I had brought in a pretty big client, Constellation Energy Group. They at the time were doing like 400 people for contingent
Oh wow,
staffing. So I mean,
massive
I
account.
it was going to be $250,000 in commissions a year. Like that's how I looked at it. I was like, okay, I earned the lottery. You know what I mean? Like I
Yeah.
actually had the CEO help me kind of map out how I'm going to, get into this account, and it all worked out. And then when it came time to actually get paid for it, because I had followed the CEO's instructions on how to get in there, and which his direct instructions were ignore HR, go around HR, don't listen to HR. I did that, but I tried to do it in a nice way. Like I would send them cakes and I'd send them flowers, and they, would say, hey, look, you can't contact our managers. And then I would go to a golf event that I knew that they were at, and I'd meet them, and I'd still, so I wasn't going on their facility and interacting with managers, but I'd meet them at different ways to kind of find out what staffing needs they had, and ended up placing someone there before we got put on as a vendor. And that burnt the bridge eternally. So then they told our CEO that they would be interested in working with our company only if I wasn't their account manager. So imagine you've put all this work in to get this big account to come on board with your company, and you've built all these relationships that have, I would say, allowed this to even exist. And then they say, look, we're going to spend a quarter, they're going to spend millions of dollars with us, close to 5 million. And then that $250,000 that I was going to get was going to get given to another guy in the office that had not done anything. Like, so that when I talk about the coming from a place of pain, that hurt, like to know how hard I worked and know how much effort I'd put into that. And then see him. I mean, he literally was able to buy a boat like 3 months into getting that account. And
And I'm guessing he didn't thank you at all.
I do feel bad for him because I was I was in my 20s. I was somewhat immature. I'm still kind of immature, but yeah, I dropped some aggressive comments. I was like, oh, must be nice to hit the lottery, blah blah blah. Like I would, just, and
Underhanded, yeah.
I'd walk out of meetings when they're like, highlighting how great this Constellation Energy account is. I just walk out. I'm like, this is crazy. Like, eventually I got fired. So that was where things, I would say, started. I was like, before I got fired, I was actually, I'd been thinking about ideas, and we talked about it earlier about taking action. So the idea that I think I don't know if I referenced it in the book or not, but one of the ideas I was trying to bring to fruition was uh, night washers. And whoever is listening to this, if you want to, pursue this idea, I didn't take the action, but the idea was like, would you like to wake up in the morning and your car is completely clean, like detailed to the max? And the idea would be that you just set up appointments, and it's probably a lot more realistic to accomplish now, but like the ability to come in, completely wash the car, detail it, then you wake up in the morning and you've got this insanely,
Clean car.
clean car. So that was I didn't really go down that road too far, because again, it's mid to late 2000s, that the tech scene wasn't where it is today. And then I tried to sell carpets to college freshmen that were moving in, and that failed miserably. It cost me about $5,000 to buy a bunch of carpets, and then I went from like different campuses, and I lost like 14 pounds over the course of like a week, because moving carpets is very
They're
I
so
would say,
heavy. They're so heavy. They're
imagine
so
moving.
impossible.
Oh,
Anyone who's
dude.
like, yeah, I want to move a carpet, it's like, no, no, because we literally had to do, and then if the carpets get wet, oh my God, it's the end of the world.
Well,
And
the nail in the
the
coffin there was I was supposed to be at the University of Maryland. I was like, this is going to be my big payday. I'm going to make like 25 grand. All these freshmen are moving in. Torrential monsoon downpour for 2 days straight. I'm not even exaggerating. Like I was like, I can't set up and sell carpets in the rain. Like that's insane. So now
yeah,
I'm stuck with all these carpets. I ended up driving around to a bunch of different carpet places in the DC area, and setting them up for consignment. Because I was like,
I could only imagine what your wife's going through with the $5,000 worth of carpets in the house. It's all over the place. You're like, I'm not crazy. Like, we're gonna win. I swear we're gonna win. But like, this might not be, because the thing I appreciate with you, Josh, and like a lot of people aren't vulnerable enough to go, hey, I failed a ton. And you're like, dude, I just stacked each learning from each of the failures, because you start to sit there and realize that it's like, it's not about it's not about winning. It's about the ability to overcome the failure. And it's about being okay with that and being like, the failure is not a reflection on me. It's a reflection on like where I need to grow and what I can do differently. And maybe I didn't read this correctly.
yeah, and I think you have to experiment. I mean,
Of
hopefully you're
course.
not losing $5,000 every time you experiment. But I will say I didn't lose money there. It just was the hardest I've ever worked to make 2 grand in my life. So I netted 7 grand out of the five, but it took me like 6 or 7 months and a
Yeah.
lot of. I probably lost money when you take the gas into account and everything like that. But it was, yeah. But yeah, that I mean that was so that happened, and my wife was also, I think, so this was 2000 like 8 9, so she was pregnant with my first or their first son. I'm sure she's thinking like, man, this guy, I really
I
picked a
picked a
winner
winner
here.
here. Dude, I don't know what it is, but as I'm going through this, because Josh mentioned like I just got married a week ago, 10 days ago, and I'm going on my honeymoon tomorrow. And it's just, dude, you start to sit there and there's so many life events happening, and you're like, dude, the financials are not ready. Like what do I need to do to get this going? Because
Yeah.
you want to have a family, but you don't want to be like not be able to take care of them. And it's this stressful thing of like, ah,
No, it was so what happened is I guess to get to the whole like tap the big idea concept was I was doing all these things, and then the one, not to give away the story, but like I was at a bar in Baltimore, and I met a few buddies of mine, and we were just going to have a few drinks before an Orioles game, and we're sitting there, and it takes like 20 minutes to get a drink, and I'm like, this is ridiculous. Like I can see the taps right there. Like I just go over there and just pour 4 beers? And they're like, yeah, that'd be cool. And I was like, no, but why can't I? Like, why can't I just pour my own drinks? Like we pump our own gas. And they were like, at the time I was like, would you pay like an extra $2 to be able to pour your own beer? And all of my friends were like, I'd pay $10 to pour my own beer. I just want to get a drink. And so that I left the bar, and I'll send you the original business plan that I did after I left the bar. But I was up till like 4 a.m. I was like, I've got the big idea. It's like you feel like you've got this thing and you just want to share it with the world. But I didn't have a coding background. I didn't have an engineering background. I didn't have like any of the things like that you would need to bring this business to fruition. I
yeah.
had the ability to sell, but that can only take you so far if you don't have a product. Um, but what I will say is by sharing that with like a lot of different people, it it opened up like different doors that would not have been opened up. So I shared with a bunch of friends. I shared the crappy business plan I put together. And I always like to have friends that'll shoot holes in things.
Of
Hey, tell me
course. Yeah.
where you think this
Broaden
isn't going to
perspective.
work.
Yeah.
And my one buddy was like, hey, there's a company in Atlanta that just did taps on the table. And I was like, well, that's not really what I'm going for, but I'll reach out to them and see what their deal
What
is.
they're doing.
It was at a bar called Stats down in Atlanta, and so I was like, screw it, I'm going to get on a plane and go check it out. So I got on a plane and went down there, and I ended up meeting the guy that did that, and he had actually gotten the technology from a guy in Ireland named Philip, and he was like, yeah, I'm gonna focus on opening up a bunch of places like this. If you'd like to help sell, like there might be an opportunity for that. Well, I went 0 for 50 trying to sell that product, which is, that's a very demoralizing experience to go 0 for 50. I probably rounded up, maybe it was 47, but either way, never let the truth get in the way of a good story, right?
But it's super important. I want to bring this up. It's super important that as the audience is listening, Josh literally said, "Hey, I heard about this guy, and I'm gonna hop on a plane and go see him." The guy didn't know he was coming. He just said, "I'm going," and it's like, you just went. Like these are what it takes. These are the decisions it takes to create your dreams and to make them a reality. And it doesn't hurt to spend a little bit of money to go explore and see the possibility of this, because you never know what you're going to run into. So I just wanted to add that in.
Yeah.
But you are, yeah, you're doing great.
No, it was, but I tried to get things going, and the feedback I got from a lot of customers was, man, this is going to be really expensive, not just for your product, but to run draft lines through, through the floors to all the tables. And then the one said, hey, if you had like a mobile solution, like something that could roll in and we could test it out, I'd be up for that. So then, I was like, well, could we do that? And, the guy in Atlanta was like, yeah, are you going to pay for it? And I was like, yeah, I'll pay for it. So, I'd been still making some money doing the staffing thing just here and there. So I had some cash, and I think I spent about 10 grand to make these 2 beer tables. And I got the guy to sign a 6-month lease that was going to cover, I think it was going to be about 12 grand over the 6 months. So I figured, hey, like I'll make 2 grand off of it, and I'm able to prove the concept. And the interesting part is when I had them built and I installed them in his place, I was like, oh, you should put these 2 like craft beers on there. And he was like, nah, we're gonna put Miller Lite and Blue Moon. And I was like, really? Those are the 2 beers you're gonna put on both tables? He was like, yeah. He said, because they come in and they spend $500 every Wednesday on a hamburger, so they're gonna get whatever they want. Like the Miller and the Miller rep.
Yeah.
Not to share any
Yeah.
illegal practices, but that was 2008. It was another failure. It was not a dispensing system. It like literally would dispense straight foam, like full pitchers of foam.
Oh, because it wasn't okay. It wasn't coming out correctly. But I think the other major thing here is that you're going to the market to see what the solution is, instead of sitting at your home and you're like, let me start pouring the beers and making sure they work correctly. And it's like, no, you have to go to the market and see what they enjoy and see what might work.
Yeah, I mean this particular version required a key to put in the hole. But as I was going through that process, again, like I didn't understand how beer comes out. I mean, I'd gone to college and I did the little pump thing where you'd pump the keg, but I didn't understand why it was coming out so foamy. So then, I'd read Rich Dad Poor Dad in my kind of entrepreneurial journey. And I said, I need to find a rich dad around, this area that knows everything about, dispense. So I
Yeah.
just started asking bar owners. I was like, who's the smartest person in dispense, And everyone kept pointing me towards AC Beverage. So then I drove down to Annapolis. I lived in Baltimore. And I was like, hey, I want to come work for you. And he was like, we're not hiring. I was like, I don't need you to pay me. I just want to come work for you. And he was like, so you want to come do work and not get paid? I was like, you're going to pay me with your knowledge. And he was like, okay, well, meet me in, we're going to a project tonight in New Jersey. Meet me at this, rest area at like 7 p.m. I was like, that's weird. I'm going to meet I'm going to meet him at 7 p.m. Where, what does this entail? We end up driving to New Jersey, working through the night. So it was a Champ sports bar. And basically I got to learn how to put a draft system together, from midnight to like 6 a.m. So
Wow.
so I did that for a few other projects, and then that opened the door to him saying, hey, there's this company in Ireland that's marketing these self-serve tables, maybe you should talk to them. I was like, yeah, maybe I should. So I ended up talking to them, not to like give away the whole story, but I figured out they had no idea how to bring their product to the United States, because they had said something very telling on an email where I said, hey, I'm a bar owner in Pennsylvania. I want to buy one of these. Do you have something saying that, I can do this in the state of Pennsylvania? Because Pennsylvania Liquor Board's pretty strict on things. And they said, oh yeah, we've got a blanket approval across the whole country. And I was like, no, you don't. Like that doesn't exist. I personally had to get, approval for my technology prior to them, every single state, and in Maryland, every single county. So I basically was a paralegal at this stage in my life because I had to get all these liquor authorities to approve it. So then I just said, look, you clearly don't understand the US market. I do. I want to grow this concept. What does it look like for us to work together? So they flew me to Ireland. I'd never been to Ireland. Time was 2009. So I'm barely 30, I guess. And it was awesome. I got a flight to Ireland. I got to drive around Ireland with their, some of their leadership team and see how it was working in the market. And they had landed a pretty large deal with Diageo, the owners of Guinness. So
Okay.
it wasn't like they had to go out and get 200 locations individually. They landed one customer who gave it away to all of the pubs in
Oh,
Ireland.
huge, huge.
So that's illegal in the United States. So that model wouldn't work here because they want to encourage, I guess, fair competitiveness. So it's like, that local craft beer has the same opportunity to get on tap as, a
Oh,
macro,
okay. Interesting.
um, but that was, so that was kind of like that next step, but it's, just kind of like connecting the dots backwards. Like at each stage, I was like a leap of faith.
Of
Like,
course.
I don't know how this is going to work out, but let's try this, but that
Yeah.
was my first like actual job after, probably a year and a half or 2 years of not, like, I was just, kind of like doing little things here and there to create money.
No, absolutely. And that's what it takes sometimes where you sit there and you go, I don't know what I'm doing, but I'm working towards this goal. And by you going up to people and going, hey, man, I want to work for free, he's obviously like, what is this guy's deal? But like, come along. There's so many people that would do that because they're like, oh, this guy's driven. He actually wants to do something. But too few people are willing to put themselves in that situation because maybe they haven't saved up enough money. Maybe they aren't in the right financial situation. Maybe they aren't driven. Sometimes you just got to jump and see what ends up happening. And it sounds very similar to I had the founder of Reebok on, and he talked about how he had to make a Boston connection to get Reebok into the States. He's like, dude, it is so hard to get it in the States. He's like, the States is like another monster. So it sounds very similar to what you did and realize the value prop that you had, because a lot of us don't realize the value that we bring. But you were able to see that for yourself, which I think is awesome.
Well, it kind of brings up an interesting point to your listeners too. I actually got offered a job to work for him because he saw how hard I worked and how driven I was. And he actually tried to sell me off self-care. He's like, that's going to be a fad. Like, don't, like, come work with me. You could make good money. Like, I like your work ethic. I think you bring a lot of good energy to the team. Because I was literally working for free for like a month or two,
Yeah.
where I would just show up hey, tell me what project I can help out on. And then they just kept giving me more and more responsibility, but that gave me the foundation for like understanding draft systems. And then
Yes.
also I was able to make the foam go away. Like I would have foam nightmares, when we did some installations because it was just straight foam coming out the taps,
Yes.
and so that was, it was but all that to say, like, if you're listening to this and you're excited about a certain field, find somebody killing in that field and do what I just did. Offer to work for free. And if you're like me, you'll probably get offered a job at the end of that free period.
And the thing is that when you're a high performer, people want to attract high performers. It's very hard to do that. So anyone who does this, like, I'll work for free thing, people love that. And they'll be like, come work for us or make some money with us at least, like do something with us
Yeah.
because they want to keep those people around.
Yeah. And that's actually, someone did that to me. We Duncan, he's awesome guy. He's in the book. He's from Australia, and he messaged us over email and said, hey, I want to do a free internship with you guys in the United States. And then he got on a plane, showed up in Chicago when I lived there, and he worked with us for like, after like a month. I was like, dude, I can't not pay you. You're doing so much work. I gotta pay you. And he was like, oh, thanks, mate. And so he it was funny because he bought a moped when he landed, and he would drive. It was a broken moped, so he bought a broken moped because he grew up on a farm. He learned how to fix it, so he fixed it and used that to get to the office every day, and then sold it for more than he bought it for on the way out. So it was like, I was like, I love this kid.
He's so
Like
creative.
but
So creative. And the thing is, but you have to be open enough to respond to someone who's like, I want to come work for you from Australia. Like most people are like, yeah, that's a BS email, delete. So my point here is that Josh saw opportunity everywhere. And you have to see opportunity everywhere. And only when your eyes are open and you see these different possibilities does it become an opportunity. So how did you end up getting into Pour My Beer? Where did it end up going? What did it take to get there?
yeah. So there's, I look at it in phases or chapters, I guess, similar to a book. But I did the thing with the Irish company for a few years. So 2010, it was me and my business partner, or I would say co-worker at the time. We weren't business partners at the time, but Declan, we started, selling. Like that's what we could do. We could sell these beer tables. So we sold 200,000 in orders the first year in 2010, and then another 800,000 in 2011. And then we had set the goal to do 1.7 in 2012. And then around June, the Irish company went bankrupt. So that was not going to happen. And then they wanted us to restart a new company. But then what was it? I mean, there was some shady stuff going on. So we were like,
Well,
yeah, we don't really want to be involved in restarting a company that you didn't tell us was going bankrupt until the last possible second. So we're going to start our own company.
So that's an important lesson for people to realize, is that you learn lessons through people, right? So you trust people. Like the way I usually do it is you trust people off the start. Some people go, I have no trust for people. I go, I usually have trust for people. And then they start to lose the trust, whether they tell you they're going bankrupt or anything of the sort. But it's just these ways of always testing and seeing what happens. But it's that awareness of knowing I can always go in another direction. I have value in what I'm doing. There's ways to recreate this value.
Yeah, and that was an interesting, I guess, point in time too, because we had sold a bunch of these beer tables, and there were some locations that were doing really well. Like we had a customer in Vegas doing 50 grand a month through the beer
Oh,
tables.
awesome.
So, but it was more of a gimmick than it was an actual like changing of the way you do business. So we were in the process of starting like the self pour on the walls, where you could transact with the wall, and it could have like anyone could transact with it, versus like at a table you can't just walk up to someone's table and take some of their pitcher of beer and for yourself. That's just not practical. So the walls were becoming a thing as the company was going out of business. And then Declan and I were like, look, we didn't have much capital between the two of us. And we were like, if we're going to start on our own, like, what does that look like? So we agreed, 50-50, and we started Pour My Beer in December of 2012 without a real plan. Like we didn't have a product. So we were going to try to resell this company in Austria's product for the beer tables. And then we were starting to entertain these other companies in the United States that we could potentially resell their technology too. Because again, we didn't have a real plan. We were just like, we got to sell and we got to stay alive. Yeah. And I put like 50 grand into the company, and I didn't hard market like my friends and family, but I was able to get another like 30 grand 60 grand between those types of I guess endeavors.
Investors.
Yeah. So it wasn't, and I ended up paying back every one of those people that put their money in, just because that company was not the same company they invested in. And I just felt bad. Like I was like, actually one guy that put in 5 grand, he reached out to me, he was like, hey, I put 5 grand in like a year ago. What, I'm just curious what's going on. And at the time, like we were in a dark space, and like Declan had to go get another job. I couldn't afford to pay an installer. So I was doing everything and only had like probably $1 grand in the checking account. And I wasn't paying myself either. And I was like, look, dude, like someone told him we were going public. That's why he put his 5 grand in there. And I was like, you got lied to. And I was like, I feel awful for that. So I was like, I can pay you back the 500 over the next 10 months. Like, I'll figure it out. Like, you shouldn't have lost money, or you shouldn't have invested if you thought we were going public. And after talking to him and telling him kind of my plan with getting this Austrian company as my partner, and, he was like, you know what, like, I want to let it ride. I think it's, I think you're going down the right path. So that was, that was 2015-ish when he had approached me about getting his money back. But in 2014, I call that my Britney moment. That's where I shaved my head and went a little crazy. Again, I forgot the part about like the company in Ireland that went bankrupt. They did start another company, and they owed us $100,000, but they never paid us. But I gave them back the website that I had built. Like I had built this marketing tool to get leads in, and it was doing what it was supposed to do. And I'd gotten us some Bar Rescue. So every time Bar Rescue came on, we were getting more leads. So it was this lead gen machine. And I was like, look, I'll give you back the website if you give me, if you commit to paying me, 10 grand a month for the next 10 months. And they said, okay, we'll do that. And guess what? We didn't get paid the first month. Instead, we got served papers that they were suing us.
Oh
And
my God.
I was like, so not only do I not have the money now, you've got this lead gen tool, and I've got to probably take out a loan to defend myself.
Yeah.
It's just like, talk about like the worst possible start of a company. It's like, you know, no money, you're getting federally sued, and you're, and on top of that, they paid a PR company to send this press release to like of them suing us to like all of our prospects. So it was like, wow,
Oh, because
you
you had all the
guys
clients lined
are
up. Yeah.
like next
Ridiculous.
next level awful people. Like, so yeah, that, but like they're dead now, not physically, but as a company. And here we are, with 600 plus locations. So it's, the good guys do win. Not to end it on that, but like that pain of going through that motivated me to be like, all right, I've been down this road before. Let's go. I
We
can
can
take a
survive.
beating.
Yeah, we can survive because it is just that's incredible. Because there's so much of it where we just have so much adversity in our life and we don't realize, but it's all those moments that led up to that. It's the middle school, it's the getting the 250 removed, it's all of these adversities that you've already faced. And then you get to this point and it's like, I don't back down, I step up. I'm going to war. I'm ready for this.
Yeah, no, I mean, and there's been anyone that reads the book, you'll read about some other gut shots that took place, but you're able to take those gut shots when it's like business coach Dan Martell. He was he always says, like, you start out freaking out over $500 problems, and then the 500 problems aren't a big deal, and then it's the $5,000 problems, and then the $5,000 problems aren't a big deal, and then it's $50,000 problems. And he was like, once you get up to a $500,000 problem, not really impacting you, like that's the next one's a $5 million problem, right? So it's like it's just upping the level of pain threshold, I guess.
Yeah. And it takes time. It takes a lot of time to up that pain threshold. And most people never experience it because they don't choose this life of creation and value creation and going out and doing something that's an incredible feat. So you guys have 600 plus locations today. I know you have like over 100 projects you're working on. What excites you the most about overcoming these challenges? And what is something that you could leave the audience knowing like, hey, it's gonna be okay. Like I have been beaten down and I have overcame, so like you can too.
Yeah, I mean, we're in the hospitality business. I mean, we're a technology company, but we are in the hospitality business, which, man, so many unique, amazing people that I've gotten to meet and interact with over the years. I think of David Cohn, one of our early customers out on the West Coast in San Diego, and just the wealth of, I mean, he's got similar stories to me, like where they were literally out of money opening up their first location. Now they've got 30 locations scattered up and down the West Coast and some in Maui. But you get to meet such interesting people, and even in same with the entrepreneur world. Like, the term imposter syndrome, I used to be like, what is that? That's kind of. But I remember thinking when I went to an entrepreneur event where you had to be doing at least 3 million in revenue to even like apply for it. And I
Yeah.
remember when I finally crossed that threshold of 3 million and I applied for it, and then I got you know chosen to attend it. It's called Mastermind Talks, and I remember sitting at a table with like Philip McKernan, who's this world-renowned author, wrote One Last Talk, and I didn't know him at the time, and then like two other like big-time authors, and then Ronsley Vaz, who's like he's like an AI expert and #1 podcaster in Australia. Like, and I'm sitting at this table, I'm like, why the F am I at this table? Like, these people are like, they're like, I don't deserve to be at this table. But it was one of those kind of like moments where, they validated, like, I didn't say that, externally, but it was just like, you've earned the right to sit at this table because of the things you've been through.
Yeah.
Not just the revenue bar, not, it's just like, like you just have to be willing to take the pain. Because pain equals growth, that whole thing. But going back to like today, like what excites me today is like we have an awesome team. Like, there's people on our team that you know left other careers, like literally had no experience in this world, and we're like, I just like what you're doing and I want to be a part of it. And seeing them thrive, when they come, come to work with us. Like that excites me. We're starting to do a lot of projects with hotels now. Like for the most part, all these locations, they're individually owned entrepreneurs. So I always
Yeah.
say we're not in the business of selling self-serve technology or taps or whatever. We're in the dreams business. We sell people dreams and we help their dreams become a reality. And then when you see them flourish, you see them, doing 100, 200, 300,000 a month through our system, and they share with you that their labor costs are half the industry average and some a third. Like they're excited. Like they took that leap of faith the same way I did, and they're thriving. And
Yeah.
like any entrepreneur, I want to keep growing it. I want to get to that. I want to cross that $10 million barrier, and then once I cross that barrier, I want to cross the $20 million barrier, and continue to innovate and create value, like you said.
Absolutely. That's awesome. That is awesome. And Josh, you've been so gracious with your time. Where can people learn more about you, hear about Pour My Beer? Yeah.
Yeah. So our website. Follow us on Instagram. We try to post some pretty fun content. The book, Tap the Big Idea. I got to send you some copies as well. But yeah, I'm excited to kind of continue to grow. When you think of the industry as a whole, there's a million bars and restaurants, and we're only in 600. So, keep an eye out for us. We're going to be spreading through the Hiltons and through the Marriotts, the IHGs. Like hotels are really enjoying our product.
Absolutely. And the other thing is that a lot of you guys might not know this, but you've probably been to a Pour My Beer. Like you might not know it, but you've probably been there. Just if you've seen the self-service, there's locations in Tampa, there's locations in St. Pete. I'm just saying that from my area, but they're all over the place. So it's an important thing to remember. And yeah, Josh, thank you so much.
No problem. Yeah, check us out online. The locations map, you'll probably put that in the show notes. But yeah,
Absolutely.
love for you to go check it out and see it for yourself.
Absolutely.